Hey everybody, welcome back. Hope you've had a great couple of weeks. Apologies I missed last week. I had forgot to mention on the video back a couple of weeks ago that I actually had the Rattle Gravel event on that Friday. And yeah, being a short week and it's all been sort of mayhem and madness with the TDU, it was going to be a bit of a push to try to get a video out, and that turned out to be the case. So we're back this week, and yeah, Rattle Gravel was a great time, so thank you again to the organisers for putting that on. It's excellent to just get a big gravel event here in Radelaide. And yeah, the week prior to that, we also had the kickoff of the local mountain bike race season with a short track race at Eagle, which is literally just across the road from me, the Eagle Park Mountain Bike Park. Got the win in B grade, which is okay for a semi-old man like me. I'm not normally very good at the short, fast, furious racing, so I do tend to struggle a lot more in, say, the CX events, as opposed to the longer, more endurance where I can just try to tap out a non-terrible power for a long time, and the pressure's not so much on ultimate corner speed and so on in a 4-hour event versus a 30-minute event. So that was a good way to kick off 2025, as well as it was a great ride, great fun ride on the Rattle Gravel. After those two, that takes my race total to 304, so only 696 races to go to hit my goal target of 1,000. Let's see where I can get the number 2 by the end of this year. If I can get it to around 320 by the end of this year, that will be not too bad. Hopefully 325. Okay, good time to give a quick update on all the testing happening at the Land of Low Friction here. And a couple of these are going to link directly into the testing we'll be covering from the German Bike Magazine, which is all going to be a bit exciting. So firstly, still playing my way through the retest of the Halo Immersive Wax, and it looks like this is going to, I think, go all the way through to the end of Block 6, so it's going to take me a little bit yet to complete this retest. And as I updated a couple of weeks ago, it's just, completely different to the first bag that was tested that set a record wear rate. So we'll be able to, cover all of that once we do the detail review at the end of this retest, and that's going to be a whole thing. But suffice to say that is where that is at, and it's just so interesting that it's testing, competitively, especially in light when we see the test results for the German Bike Magazine. After that has been completed, I'll be ripping straight into the retest of the Halo Wax Drip, and then, barring anything super urgent coming up, I will hopefully finally start work on testing the Silca Endurance Chip and Speed Chips. Moving to Machine 2, I'm still working my way through some testing, so private testing for an immersive wax, because it's part of an immersive wax in development. So I will hopefully finish that around mid-February, and then we'll queue up the dynamic wax, so the Hyper first and then the Wonder. This one's increased in priority, again based on the outright efficiency testing that we'll be having a look at shortly. And at least also, their marketing that we quickly covered a couple of weeks ago makes a bit more sense now that I have seen that German magazine's testing and the work that they're doing. So all up, the whole test landscape's getting pretty exciting. Machine 3, just finishing off some testing for this manufacturer that has a titanium armor on their chains. That'll be wrapping up soon, and then I will get to the 4th test for the bike fleet, which is going to be the synthetic version of TuneApp. So we did the the organic version initially. And then we have booked in a private test for another biolubricant, some more testing for a different immersive wax manufacturer, and potentially another chain manufacturer that has some fancy super long chains that they are looking at getting some private data on that versus other chains. So all pretty flat out. Let's just duck back to me. So we can see that test machine number 4 is really needed, and I had hoped to be a bit further along with that, but it's just been so frenetic on every front, sort of both during and after the school holidays. I should have that built by no later than the end of February. And that machine is going to be reserved for open testing. So the plan will be, there might be times where I'll override it if I have an absolute burning curiosity myself about a particular product and I think that it really deserves to get a slot on a test machine. I will, I guess, sometimes say, hey, this one's going on, but it will always be an open data test. But hopefully most times we're looking to, and I'm talking to my super IT lady, if we can set up some way of having a voting option on the off the website, or potentially off the YouTube videos. I've seen that on other videos, but me being practically Amish in terms of my technology abilities, I'm not sure how that's done yet. But one way or another, we'll be looking to have a open voting system going, and each next test on that fourth machine will be the most voted for product by the people to queue up for testing. So yeah, the other three machines will then be mostly for obviously the private testing, which is just flat out booked all the time these days. However, if we do manage to get a quieter spot and get a spot on one of those machines as well, that will be excellent because we'll be able to get more open data tests done. And as you know, where possible, I do try to get manufacturers, even if it is a private book test, to give the okay to green light their data being open. That's really quite mixed if the test hasn't gone quite as well as hoped. But again, unless it's a product in development, because product in development pretty hit and miss because they're often experimenting with various bases and additives. I don't include those on the data table, just listed even as a private test. It is really only sort of fully fledged products. Even if the manufacturer doesn't go open with that data, at least I can still include it in the overall rankings. We just get more data to put in our averages and medians. So we're still building up that table as best we can. But yeah, hopefully 4 machines, it's going to be the max I can feasibly stay on top of running anyway. But the addition of that fourth machine will hopefully, we'll get some interesting testing done this year that's all open, because the last couple of years there's been too little of that, sadly. So I apologise for that the private just got so busy and kind of took over everything. But we'll be bringing some balance back starting very soon. Oh yeah, also, if you want to help support this type of work being done, please try to do the whole like and subscribe thing, because those little things apparently really help tiny little channels and weird people like me. Spending the big bucks on accurate torque sensors is also a big plus, because a number of facilities in the past have tried to do outright efficiency via electrical consumption. So basically, what's the current draw by the motor to drive it? Obviously, if more power is needed because the chain lubricant is less efficient, then that's going to show up in either the volts or the amps, or both, depending on which one they're doing. But they always end up invariably chasing their tail, and the results kind of jump around a bit, because as a motor heats up, it becomes less efficient. It needs more power to maintain the same output. Therefore it has to work a little bit harder because it's now drawing a bit more power, which means it heats up a little bit more and becomes less efficient, which means it needs to draw more power. And for most things, depending on what the load is and what temperatures we're talking about, it may not be much of an issue at all. But when you are trying to do something as precise as measure the efficiency losses from one lubricant to another, and every half a watt really counts, or every fraction of a watt really counts, this is where we've seen such facilities fall over and sometimes get themselves into quite big feedback loops, where it's like, holy Batman, how have you not sort of flagged that there's an issue with the test? When you see a product increase by 14 watts of loss in 90 minutes, are you imagining that is happening when someone is out cycling on their nice sunny day on the road? Nobody starts their sunny road ride with a, say, 5 watt loss lubricant and finish with a 20-25 watt loss lubricant after an hour and a half. So and especially in a clean lab environment, if that's occurring, that is a red flag. And we also saw, never confirmed, but say Wheel Energy, they had results going up and down like a mountain peak for some lubricants. And so we believe that was them chasing the tail on trying to sort of cool or prevent heating of the motor and the changes in the draw. We don't know unless they sort of come back that it's an issue, but it's funny how they sort of stopped testing after all of that occurred post a particular media release of their test data. And again, you just don't have lubricants changing their efficiencies by watts from very short periods. You don't go out and ride and 1 minute your lubricant's 5 watts loss, and then half hour later it's 8 watts loss, and then half hour after that it's 6 watts loss. Things like that just don't happen. So when that's present in your data, you probably shouldn't go public with it. Alrighty, let's get to the main fun topic of today, which is some exciting outright efficiency testing by a bike magazine in Germany, which I believe is called Bike Magazine. Now, we'll be careful how much I show. There's some, we'll definitely be able to show enough that you can see why this is of great interest to us overall in this space, but without so much or showing too much that would potentially dud them out of some deserved revenue by people potentially subscribing to see the article. Because work like this, there's so much time, resources, and not a small amount of capital resources for equipment involved in putting together a project and testing like this. I think they absolutely deserve some, at least a month subscription to go and have a look at the testing results overall and what they're doing. So so I'll be quite cognizant of that, but I also want to run through why we're all interested. But so I don't think we've really had anything like this for probably say about a decade-ish since the Friction Facts days. There are other facilities that either have done in the past or are still doing currently some outright efficiency testing, but the problem is it simply isn't that open. And also a number of those facilities I've covered in videos in the past, some severe concerns around the accuracy and just, I guess, known traps around outright efficiency testing that they've fallen into, and that's been quite easily proven by way of the fairly wildly wonky results. There are facilities, for instance, at the moment which it's been on the list to cover, such as the Silverstone Sports Hub. They have a outright efficiency test facility, but the way it tests the chain or chain lubricant efficiency is, in my view, a little bit esoteric. They basically have, let me just get an image up. Okay, so we can see they have a big chain ring. It runs down to the same size chain ring. Initially, I think they had video where it showed going down to a smaller cog, but there are issues with the chain going on an angle, messing with things. So it basically now runs straight to the same size chain ring. So this chain line will run straight down. That's as straight a line as I can draw with my mouse. So the pendulum is brought to a particular point. I believe it's released by a magnet and it swings, and they are measuring the oscillations until the pendulum stops. So it's quite different. So we can see there that there's overall a very low amount of chain articulation or chain movement, and also at quite low speed. And with any test, the further away from the actual use case, I guess a test condition is, the more questions or concerns one might have about the cross-correlation for those test results to the actual use case. So that wouldn't come as a big surprise that, potentially a lubricant that tested very efficient in that really low speed, low amount of movement and articulation test there. Could we put our hand on heart and say, yes, that is absolutely going to be awesome in the very high speed amount of action that's happening on a bicycle chain when someone's pedaling at 110 cadence in the large chain ring, and we have about 50,000 articulations a minute going on, each link has 8 separate pieces, parts to it that are needing to articulate and reticulate each articulation. So you have literally hundreds of thousands of pieces of mechanical friction action happening when you're pedaling along in the big ring at those cadences. Does that test, is that going to have a lot of confidence in saying that yes, lubricants that excel in that test will also excel when put under this very high speed, high movement situation as well? Unless you test for that, I don't think you can actually say that. And the other issue that, I guess not so much issue, the other just endemic fun that we have with independent facilities like this is every manufacturer, every client that goes to the Sports Hub to undertake that testing, they might test their product versus 9 competitors. They need to build their own data table. And they might get beaten by 4 competitors, but they can go to market showing that, hey, from this independent outright efficiency testing, we were the best and we smashed 5 key competitors in the testing. We don't know, we don't see the other competitors that beat them. And every client is building their own data table. So for all we know, out of all the lubricants that the Silverstone Sports Hub have seen, that product that's going to market saying, hey, we did this independent testing and we beat, 5 key competitors, they could be ranked about 30th out of all the lubricants that Silverstone have come through the test facility. It could be overall really average. We don't know. So this is where the value of an open data table that's built up over years and is just, when new products are tested, they slot into X position on that league table. That I think is of much greater value to the cycling world versus just some of these facilities where each client is just building their own mini table and going to market with what they want to choose from that. So I don't want to sound too harsh, not saying that they don't add value. If they help a manufacturer genuinely bring a better product out to the market from that testing, then awesome. But there's just those limitations and concerns, as opposed to I think what this Bike Magazine testing is doing has just so much more relevance and so much more informational value for us all, and that's why it's potentially something quite exciting. So let's have a bit of a look at what they're doing. So last bit of pre-ramble, there's a reason why, say, Friction Facts was never going to be able to continue, ongoing years, because trying to make money out of bicycle chain lubricant testing is not easy, especially outright efficiency testing. So if we want this type of cycling journalism and information to take place, we should support that. So even if you just join a subscription for them for a month, because I know, subscriptions, there's 100 places that are all clamoring to try to get subscription and support. But if you value the information in this particular space, because the Humble chain lubricant has such a big impact on how your bike runs and also your running costs, then I'm not saying go join them for life, but consider joining them for at least for a month's subscription to help support the huge amount of work, time and cost that would have gone into doing such testing, because doing so helps encourage more such work to take place in cycling that is, actually proper depth, proper technical and proper information that we can all benefit from. Alrighty, so we don't have a lot of pictures. Well, we got some of them. I'm trying to focus more, just on the actual machine. So they've got some mechanical torque sensors, so they call them brush torque sensors. They've got a fairly small chainring. They do have a derailleur on there, so we don't have the concerns around full tension testing. If you want to know all about the concerns of full tension testing, watch the Muck-Off Files Part 2. Don't bother with Part 1. That is a terrible rambling mess. But they have already avoided some of the traps that others have fallen into in the past, so that is looking good. Spending the big bucks on accurate torque sensors is also a big plus, because a number of facilities in the past have tried to do outright efficiency via electrical consumption. So basically, what's the current draw by the motor to drive it? Obviously, If more power is needed because the chain lubricant is less efficient, then that's going to show up in either the volts or the amps or both, depending on which one they're doing. But they always end up invariably chasing their tail, and the results kind of jump around a bit because as a motor heats up, it becomes less efficient. It needs more power to maintain the same output. Therefore, it has to work a little bit harder because it's now drawing a bit more power, which means it heats up a little bit more and becomes less efficient, which means it needs to draw more power. And for most things, depending on what the load is and what temperatures we're talking about, it may not be much of an issue at all. But when you are trying to do something as precise as measure the efficiency losses from one lubricant to another, and every half a watt really counts, or every fraction of a watt really counts, this is where we've seen such facilities fall over and sometimes get themselves into quite big feedback loops, where it's like, holy Batman, how have you not sort of flagged that there's an issue with the test? You know, when you see a product increase by 14 watts of loss in 90 minutes, are you imagining that is happening when someone is out cycling on their nice sunny day on the road? Nobody starts their sunny road ride with a, say, 5 watt loss lubricant and finish with a 20-25 watt loss lubricant after an hour and a half. So, and especially in a clean lab environment, if that's occurring, that is a red flag. And we also saw, never confirmed, but say Wheel Energy, they had results going up and down like a mountain peak for some lubricants. And so we believe that was them chasing the tail on trying to sort of cool or prevent heating of the motor and the changes in the draw. We don't know unless they sort of come back that it's an issue, but it's funny how they sort of stopped testing after all of that occurred post a particular media release of their test data. And again, you just don't have lubricants changing their efficiencies by watts from very short periods. You don't go out and ride and 1 minute your lubricant's 5 watts loss, and then half hour later it's 8 watts loss, and then half hour after that it's 6 watts loss. Things like that just don't happen. So when that's present in your data, you probably shouldn't go public with it. I've scrolled a fair way down the article just to have a look at their test setup. So a test machine measures the difference between incoming and outgoing power in the chain transmission. This is technically demanding because the chain efficiency is generally very high. The measurement technology must be able to withstand coarse forces but still have a fine resolution. This is achieved by the structure of a 1.5 kilowatt drive and 2 industrial brush torque sensors, which can deliver up to 200 newton meters of torque, more than the strongest bikers squeeze out of their muscles. In contrast to humans, the machine stays on ball even during performances in which the lactate would come out of our ears. Test procedure. For the chain wax comparison, we prepare 20 Shimano XT chains from a production batch with our test waxes after degreasing. Let them harden and initially ride for an hour with 370 watts. So that's notably higher than what has, I guess, been a default standard of 250 watts for quite some time. So that is overall really pleasing that they're testing at a very high load. So this corresponds to a pretty tight mountain ride for most people. But German mountain riders must be some strong folk. Remind me not to compete in a German mountain bike race, so I will get fairly smashed. In doing so, we record the development of efficiency. We average the value of the final 20 minutes, so they're basically running it for an hour at 370 watts, and they're using the final 20 minutes of that hour for their measured value. They drive at 92 revolutions per minute, and the ratio is a 32 chain ring to a 17-tooth cog without skew, so straight chain line. The chain is guided by a rear derailleur, and the sprockets are made of steel. For the second part of the test, the retracted chains are then loaded with 680 watts for 10 minutes. So again, that's fantastic, getting some testing done at a very high load and for a good period. Here too, we record the efficiency. This test provides information on the extent to which the lubricants also work under raw forces. Finally, we subject a wax chain to a hard endurance test after a mud bath. We also follow the development of efficiency during this test. So all up, that looks mega. I'll show just a little bit of the results. Then we will get to some of the questions, and I'll use the word concerns loosely, but we've got some questions, but overall, I'm very excited about what is happening at Bike Magazine on this front. Okay, so we have in number one spot, so the pink line is the test results at 680 watt load, and the grey line are the test results at the 370 watt load. So this is where, you recall from the video a couple of weeks ago where we had a brief look at the Dynamic wax, the Hyper and the Wonder wax, and their claims around they were the best wax, up to sort of 6 watts ahead of their competitors. Now that makes sense where that claim came from, so that is super. They just weren't pulling that out of the air. And I'm quite excited to test the Dynamic waxes. You can see M Speed wax there quite close at 12.2, followed by Dry Fluid, which is a German drip wax lubricant, which a great guy called Florian sent me some years ago to test, and I've just never been able to find a spot for it because it's got such low global interest, being just really a German product. Nobody really knows about it outside of Germany, so it just hasn't made the cut. But that is very interesting. And then, also super interesting there with Finish Line Halo doing overall quite well in their league table. So I'm glad that my second test of Halo wax is going much, much better than the first. Alrighty, so get to a little bit of nitty gritty. With outright efficiency testing, one of the trickiest parts is chain calibration. Unfortunately, chains are just relatively variable because there are so many little bits and moving parts, and they're all moving a lot. So going right back to the Friction Facts days and continued on and seen with the ceramic speed testing that took that basically same test process over. It was a known thing with regards to one chain could be, say, half a watt faster or slower than another chain, and that's a 250 watt load. One of the services Jason Smith used to provide was testing chains for teams, so for the pro teams, and providing them with a bunch of chains that were the hot chains for racing and a bunch of chains that were the cold chains for training. For the outright efficiency testing, when every fraction of a watt counts, knowing if a chain is half a watt faster or slower, or potentially it could be even greater than that, is obviously super important. And so, for instance, ceramic speed would their process involves every chain basically has to be broken in, strip clean with ultrasonic, lubricated with a known mineral oil, and they're looking for a known efficiency loss result with that oil. And if the result is too far out from that, that what should be a calibrated value, that chain is not then used for testing. Within a very small variance of what they're looking for, that chain is then okay to be cleaned of the mineral oil and the test lubricant applied, and then the test run. So we can see here, so if I just look at say the 370 watt test load, we can see that basically within sort of 1.1 bracket, and the next actually three lubricants, there are actually basically 8 lubricants within a 1.1 watt bracket at 370 watts load. So that's a pretty tight grouping, and I'd love to know a bit more about what is done calibrating each chain so that they know where one chain is versus another prior to testing the actual lubricants. On the chart I'm going to scroll down to, you can see that factory grease is still once again proven to be not your most awesome option versus removing factory grease and replacing with something actually awesome. The other big part for me that's missing is where's the testing after the mud stuff that they were subjected to. So they mentioned that in the test that they were put through a mud run. That's the perfect post that test data, because how lubricants perform after they've been exposed to contamination, that's basically the biggest thing we need to know from such testing, as opposed to how lubricants are running in a clean lab environment. Because that's where we see the massive changes in lubricant performance as to how much crap one absorbs, or how do they stand up to that kind of abuse. So they did that, and they said that they monitored the efficiency loss throughout that. Where is it? So yeah, there's no indication that there's sort of like a part two to this article. So I don't know why they would have done that amount of work, and because it's a bit more sort of messy and faffy to do a test involving mud contamination. My only guess is that perhaps the results were a little bit unclean and difficult to sort of easily explain, but I'm guessing. But it's a big shame that test data is not there when they've mentioned that they did that. Overall, across the league table, so if you do subscribe and have a look at the article and see the full league table, you will see that there are some surprising rankings where some products are ranked quite well, which are, I believe, sort of fairly well known that they are not good products, and they have been tested by other, I will say, very accurate facilities like, say, Ceramic Speed, which carried on from the Friction Facts. That it's a question mark as to how they would do well, or especially above some other products. And there are some other products that are a bit far down that have tested extremely well in the Ceramic Speeds testing, even though they are competitor products. Let's have a quick look. Over time, I get periodic updates from Ceramic Speed Denmark Research Lab for both lubricant testing that they have completed, as well as efficiency testing of various chain models. It's not my data to be able to publicly share, and so I haven't taken the time to consolidate all these little reports into one big table, because I can't publish that anyway, and it could ruffle feathers with some other manufacturers. So it's generally fairly low key. However, it's very lovely of them to share with me, and this one I am okay to share with you. But as a quick snapshot, so in the German magazine testing, the Silka Super Secret didn't do as well as I'm sure Silka hoped, and I think Silka are going to themselves speak to that. I think they have a pretty good sort of reason on their own as to what might have gone on there, but it did extremely well in the Ceramic Speed testing. Whereas, say, dry fluid, which did extremely well in the German magazine testing, has done comparatively, and especially, say, percentage-wise, quite a bit off the mark. This testing here by Ceramic Speed's Denmark lab is at 250 watts, so these gaps are only going to get bigger at 370 and 680 watts. So, and across the board, there's some products that have ranked well in the German magazine testing that have ranked very poorly in Ceramic Speeds testing, and vice versa. So there is, in general, again, just not great alignment between test facilities and where both facilities have tested the same products. Sometimes there is, but in too many cases there certainly is not. And so that would mean that if Ceramic Speed's data was all open to the world, and then if the Bike Magazine continued testing and made their data all open to the world all the time, a lot of cyclists would be fairly confused about whom to believe. I do have a report for waxes, which is not public at the moment. Obviously, if you have products that test exceptionally well in both, so for instance, I can say that Molten Speed Wax tested extremely well with Ceramic Speed and tested really well with the Bike Magazine. If you get products that test awesome across both, then that gives you a lot of confidence that things are really groovy. But having mismatches and misalignments between precision test labs is always going to raise some concern and some confusion. And it's not for me really at this stage to say 100% on placing my stock every test in this particular facility or 100% in this one. I can't make a call. I don't know yet enough about Bike Magazine's testing and for instance, their calibration protocol versus what I know about Ceramic Speed's calibration protocol. I think it's really up to the facilities to be having the chat and letting us all know what they think of any misalignment around the test results and why that's occurring, and then educate us all. They know their test facilities, they know how they're conducting the tests. So if Lab A versus Lab B get very different rankings for products, and that's confusing, then they should be the first to try to help us understand what might be behind that, as opposed to us trying to guess. So yeah, but all up, I'm excited. This will obviously be added to the long-term project follow-up list. What I would love to see from here is Bike Magazine talking with Ceramic Speed, Bike Magazine talking with Josh at Silca and the work they're doing with Purdue University and their testing, and coming back to fill us all in on what's happening with test results and any discrepancies around that. And wouldn't it be great? If we're stepping though ever closer to a place where we have something that's agreed upon as a, say, independent test facility that's open, providing outright efficiency testing, especially one that's doing so at the higher test loads like this, and especially if we can get them to actually do some testing with contamination, that would be fantastic, and getting those results as well. Let me just on that front, we'll duck to one little thing. A bit more data I'm allowed to share. So we can see some excellent results for some waxes. Again, overall Cyclo Wax did quite well with Ceramic Speed's testing, and not as well on the German magazine. But Prestacycle, so just an example though of lubricants that can test well clean. So when I tested Prestacycle in my wear correlation test in Clean Block 1, it did quite well. As soon as it added contamination, like, oh my God, just liquid sandpaper. And considering the chain lubricant is used outdoors, exposed to all contamination, how lubricants perform when they're exposed to contamination, that is just so important, as opposed to just clean lab test results over whether it's an hour or 5 hours. It's just, we don't ride in a clean lab, or just always indoors in a clean environment. A lot of people are riding in high contamination exposure conditions, and we need to know what's going on with our chain lubricants in those conditions. So yeah, we need to push further on that front with the outright efficiency testing as well. So yeah, that's why I was so disappointed that the post-mud testing wasn't there. All right, so yeah, ongoing. I need to track and come back to you around what the industry leads on this outright efficiency front can advise us around alignment for the testing protocol and test results, explaining why there is the misalignment and what may be done to bring things into alignment. That will just really help everybody be able to be confident in X test facility for X outright efficiency result, and really get us to the place that we've been hoping to get to for a decade plus. The other part is, I have been looking for a very, very long time to have an outright efficiency test facility be able to work in conjunction with my wear test correlation. So, how brilliant would it be if for every test that I conduct with my very, harsh, thousands of kilometers long ZSC wear test protocol, that I could send, say, a test facility like this 3 chains. One would be the chain prepped new with the lubricant prepped as per the manufacturer instructions, so we get an outright efficiency loss result for it. Another chain I would run just through block 2, so the dry contamination block, and another chain I would run through just the wet contamination block, so that it's had all that crap thrown at it, and we get 3 outright efficiency results for that lubricant. So perfect conditions basically, post being exposed to a bunch of dry contamination, and post being exposed to a bunch of wet contamination. Having those 3 outright efficiency results to go along with the wear correlation test that we're doing here would just be brilliant. And it's something like, unfortunately, I haven't been able to use Ceramic Speed Test Lab, 1 because they're busy, and 2 because they're obviously a competitor in the space. So there's just going to be always a lot of questions around them doing the testing. Other facilities have just been just way off, like as I covered before with Wheel Energy, and I just don't have the confidence in the correlation with a facility like, say, Silverstone, because there's just such a low amount of chain movement and chain speed. This could be, and I'm so hopeful that it will be the facility that I'm looking for, and that they're going to be also willing to work together on something like this, because it would give them a lot of great data for their readers and information as well. So that would just be mega if we can get that going. So that'll be a big ticket item on the project list to see what we can do in 2025. Anyway, that better do. Let me know your thoughts around all this, and if you also think it is hopefully quite exciting and hopefully lead to some more exciting developments in this space overall, that would be just the perfect outcome. So let's see what Bike Magazine can do for us on this front, and let's see where this all leads. Otherwise, have a great weekend of cycling, everybody, and I will, fingers crossed, be able to get back next week for a fun update. There's always, surprisingly, a lot of fun stuff going on in the little land of low friction. Okay, till then, see you and have a great weekend.